Naomi Elsworth was not a woman easy to impress. There was led operations in conflict zones, negotiated treaties delicate in armored rooms, and comforted soldiers with glances empty in distant fields. His life there was been a chain of decisions fast, risks calculated, and a conviction iron in a duty. At 54, she was the only one woman black with the rank of 4-star general in the armed forces of the United States. Its name inspired respect, but also fear in some circles where he was, still measured by skin and gender. That afternoon, however, Naomi was just a woman tired, in civilian clothes, looking for signal coverage in front of a gas station in a road-forgotten Louisiana. There was left her car to the side, next to the pump, empty, while raised, his cellular toward her darling as that will help to capture the call, with the Pentagon that was cut off each 5 seconds. I had hurry, yes, but he kept his composure. He didn't wear uniform, just jeans, 1 t-shirt, white and 1 cap without insignia, nothing that screamed authority to outside eyes. Inside the store, the shop assistant watched her suspiciously. First, she looked through the window. Then he walked over to the back counter and dialed 911. "There is someone outside acting suspicious," he said. "It's talking to herself and looking around. It gives me a bad feeling." He didn't mention that he was black, but it didn't do missing. In less than 7 minutes, 2 patrols. They arrived at the scene. The red and blue lights began to spin, and the noise of the tires about the asphalt broke the tranquility of the hot south. Naomi barely frowned. He frowned at the sight of the patrols. Stop, hard, unnecessary. He thought that perhaps we're looking for someone more, but when saw the officers lowering his hand on the gun, he realized it was her. He put away his cell phone calmly, raised his hands in sign that it did not represent threat some, and took a step forward to speak. "Good afternoons. I'm General Naomi Elsworth. I'm trying do a call urgent. Is there any problem?" But his words were ignored. One of the police, a white man with a reddish face and jaw squeezed, yelled at him to put his hands on the car. The other one, more young man, kept his hand on the gun. Naomi repeated his name and your range, but it was of no use. "We don't have time for games," he said. The first, "You have no right to be here without giving explanations." They handcuffed her tightly, bending her over, her arm, although she did not resist. They forced her to kneel about the hot pavement, not caring that the gravel was cutting his skin. One of them reviewed his wallet and took out his ID, military, but seemed not to recognize its value, or simply, he didn't care. "It could be fake," he muttered. Inside the store, the employee looked with very wide eyes open, without knowing if rejoice in security or discomfort by the scene. Naomi didn't scream, she didn't beg, she just breathed deep, with the jaw tight. I knew what was happening was not a mistake, it was a reflex. It was not the first time its color weighed more than their medals, but what the agents did not know was that their cellular continued in cold, and to the other side, in a Pentagon conference room, someone there was heard all. If this moment resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Only then we will be able to continue telling stories that should not be forgotten. Lieutenant Colonel Bradford, in charge of coordinating the call, had heard the screams, the insults, and the sound unmistakable of some handcuffs slamming shut. At first, he thought it was an interference or noise external, but he soon recognized Naomi's voice asking, calmly and clearly, to check his identity. "I am General Elsworth. I am in a gas station on the outskirts of Monroe. They are arresting without reason. I repeat, I need support." The room fell silent. An attendee activated the GPS location of the phone, and in a matter of seconds, the emergency protocol was initiated. Helicopters, they left the airbase further nearby. Armored vehicles were mobilized, and from Washington, a message was sent to the state governor. A high-ranking official has been detained illegally. Cooperate now. Meanwhile, Naomi was being led to the car patrol without being read his rights. They did not explain to him the charges, nor did they allow him a call. The officers followed, acting with a mixture of contempt and distrust, even when his ID was in the glove compartment of the vehicle. "Why would a general be alone here?" one asked. "Too much convenient." In the back seat, Naomi kept her back straight, her wrists sore, and the thoughts in order, not by she, but for what it represented. "I knew that even if they released her, the stain would remain." What his captors didn't know was that in few minutes, that forgotten town I would be the epicenter of a storm media, and that the cameras, the microphones, and the eyes of the country whole would be about they, the arrival of the military convoy. It was so fast as deafening. 2 helicopters descended in the vicinity of the small detachment police. Vehicles with Department of Defense license plates blocked the streets, and uniformed men, they descended with precision surgical. The police station was not prepared for something like this. The sheriff, a man with a mustache, thick and looked grim, he came out staggering with his hands raised. "What this passing here?" he asked in a voice unsafe. From the first vehicle low, a high-ranking official who did not offer explanations, just showed an order signed by her Secretary of Defense. "We are here by General Elsworth, and we're going without her." In less than 5 minutes later, Naomi was released, still bearing the marks of the handcuffs, on the wrists, but with the head held high. The scene was recorded by passers-by who already were starting to crowd in front of the building. Some, they recognized Naomi when he came out, his face serene contrasting with the chaos. Others just recorded by curiosity, without knowing that those images would go around the world in a matter of hours. Naomi said nothing. She got into the vehicle military, looked by last time to the 2 police officers who had her arrested and barely raised her eyebrow. "I didn't need revenge, needed justice." Inside the convoy, a young soldier offered him water. "Thank you, Lieutenant," he said in a snores. "Are you all right, General?" he asked, he with evident respect. Naomi looked him in the eyes. "I'm alive. Now we are going to show the country what we really passed. This scene hurt you. Help us continue to bring these realities to light. Subscribe to the channel." The White House was informed that same night, the president, seeing the images, demanded the investigation immediate and asked talk to Naomi personally. But she, still affected, she requested a time before appearing in public. He spent the night in an airbase close, in a room simple but safe, where was attended by doctors and accompanied for a small trusted team. He didn't want to drama, neither privileges, he only asked silence, not for weakness, but by strategy. Naomi knew that an answer impulsive could be used against him. "We will wait a moment suitable," he told his team, and when that moment arrived, did not need shout. In the morning next, the networks already were full of videos, hashtags, and analysis. General Elsworth became trend world. While some expressed indignation, others were beginning to question his version, to search inconsistencies, to be sown doubts. Why was I alone? Why without uniform? What if it wasn't who claimed to be? The machinery of discredit was activated, as always occurs when a woman black challenges the order. But Naomi didn't hide. When she appeared in front of the cameras, with his uniform impeccable, each medal shining under the spotlights, and the look fixed in the horizon, the country, he held his breath. He was about to speak, not eat victim, but as witness to something that millions live and few they can report. The uniform did not protect me from being seen as a threat. My rank did not prevent me from being brought to my knees. About the asphalt, I was treated as suspected not because of what I did, but by how I look. Naomi's voice was firm, with no need to raise the tone. His speech, conveyed in Chain National, did not appeal to drama, but to the facts. This is not just about me. It's about each citizen who has felt fear of seeing a patrol. It's about each young man who has learned not to put his hands in the pockets or not to run by fear of being misunderstood. He spoke from he heart, but also from he knowledge. There was studied strategy all his life, and now used those same presentation skills, a painful truth. The impact was immediate. Politicians, celebrities, journalists, and former military personnel, they began to take position, some in favor, others avoiding his topic, such as if it were too much uncomfortable. But it was impossible to ignore it. The news networks transmitted his statement complete. The universities organized forums the next day, and the schools, for first time in a lot time, included his name in education classes civic. Naomi did not ask sanctions specific. He only required that the reports were not archived, that the background of the officers were revealed, and that the service station hand over the security footage. I am not searching revenge. I am searching truth, because with the truth begin all real change. The background of the police officers involved began to come to light thanks to pressure public. The chief officer already there was received multiple complaints by use excessive force, but his records had been mysteriously archived or lost. The most young there was being recorded 2 years earlier, pushing a teenager, Latin for no reason apparent, but the video never there was being admitted as test. Now, under the magnifying glass national, they could no longer hide behind the silence institutional. Naomi didn't need point out guilty. He only asked that they show themselves the documents and that the country be allowed look straight ahead his own reflection. We can't correct what we are not willing to see, he declared in a second interview. The employee who made the call anonymous was also identified. He refused to give interviews, but his profile on social networks was quickly analyzed by opinion, public, comments racists, publications dubious, and a clear sympathy by groups ultra-conservatives they painted. Context that many suspected. Naomi, however, did not mention his name, neither encouraged attacks personal. The problem is not a person. The problem is a system that makes them feel validated to act. So, he said calmly. His approach disarmed the speech's defensive and opened space for one real conversation. I wasn't looking for punishment specimens, but reforms, structural, and that, for some, was more threatening than any retaliation. The weeks following were a whirlwind of interviews, hearings, and proposals legislative. Naomi was called to testify before Congress. Seated in front of senators and representatives, he recounted what had happened without embellishment, neither exaggerations. His tone was that same with which he gave orders in the field, direct, without beating around the bush. But what is most impressed was his insistence in not focusing in his personal case. Mine. It was visible because was cameras. But what about those who don't have them? How many further they have? Lived the same without anyone to support them. Listen. The living room saved silence. A congressman tried to interrupt her with the ask technique, but she looked at him firmly. I didn't come here to debate technicalities. I came to demand responsibility. Meanwhile, in the community where all there was occurred, the atmosphere was different. Some neighbors, they began to leave flowers in front of the place where Naomi was arrested. Others organized vigils, silent or painted murals with his face and the phrase that had resonated in all he country, silence is not an option. The gas station was closed temporarily after a boycott citizen. The local police, under pressure by the media and the government state, suspended the officers involved. But for Naomi, none of that was cause for celebration. This is not a personal victory, it is just a first step. The real change will come when this is not necessary, never further. If you are feeling something while reading, this is because these stories matter. Subscribe so we can continue sharing them. The Pentagon, by his part, reacted with a mixture of pride and concern. Pride in Naomi's composure, concern by his precedent that sat. They were issued press releases remembering the right of the officers, in service or not, to receive treatment worthy. They were reviewed identification protocols, and it was proposed a campaign national to educate law enforcement about as interact with military personnel in civilian clothes. Naomi was invited to participate in the preparation of said program, but put one condition: I will only participate if the civil perspective is also included. I do not want a course that teaches respect uniforms. I want one that teaches you to respect people. That position brought many voices to his cause. Civil rights organizations, veterans, retirees, universities, and even young people, content creators, began to spread his message. In schools, secondary, it was discussed his case in ethics classes. In law schools, his statements were analyzed as part of studies about racial bias. Naomi, without seeking it, had converted in symbol, but deep down, that weighed on him. Never I wanted to be an emblem. I just wanted to do a call and get on with my day. Those words, spoken privately to a close friend, revealed the emotional burden she carried. A burden she accepted, yes, but that she never should have relapse about. The governor of Louisiana, finally offered a statement. Public pressure due to the growing attention media. He apologized for the experience lived by General Elsworth and promised to thoroughly investigate what happened. But for many, his words sounded empty. Naomi, when asked about this, was brief. Apologies don't change structures, but the acts, yes. That same day, he filed a report with 10 proposals concrete to combat racism institutional in the forces police state. The document was direct, with deadlines, metrics, and monitoring mechanisms. It was not a manifesto emotional, it was a roadmap for real transformation. Despite pressure to take on political office, Naomi refused all the offers. Governors, senators, and even advisors, presidential candidates, sought her out to add her to their ranks. But she was clearer. My fight is not for power, it is by conscience. Instead of entering the political game, he founded a non-profit organization dedicated to support victims of abuse, police and train new ones, generations in leadership ethical. He called it Firm Voice, a name that summed up his conviction, because change doesn't start with shouting, but with firmness, with knowing when to speak and don't look down. This is how he explained it at the inauguration, surrounded by young people, cadets, and leaders community. As the months passed, Naomi's story stopped being just a viral case and became at a turning point. It was approved a law in his name that forced everyone, the state police departments, to use cameras corporal and record any incident where force will be used. Furthermore, by first time, they were implemented workshops mandatory about racial prejudice, directed not only at officers, but also to employees public, including health, education, and justice personnel. Naomi attended the first workshop as observer, silent. In the end, one of the youth's officers approached her and said, "Thank you for not giving up." She just nodded. Sometimes battles further. Important things are not won in trenches, but in classrooms. In parallel, he began to receive letters from all over the world. Some, they were from grateful soldiers, others from worried mothers, and even from children who saw her as a heroine. But they also arrived hate messages, threats, evenings, and questions constant. Naomi knew that every step she took challenged a structure a lot further bigger than how many officials. Racism is stubborn, but I am too, he said. In an interview, without losing her smile, she learned to live with the contradiction of being loved and hated at the same time, to inspire hope and awakening fear in who they preferred his silence. But never let that dictated his actions. Every day, when he looked in the mirror, he repeated the same phrase, "My dignity is not negotiable." 1 year after the incident, Naomi was invited to give a speech at the Military Academy graduation ceremony, where she herself had formed decades back. He went up on stage to applause, sincere and looks excited. In front of a generation new officers, his message, he was clear. Courage is not always measured in combat. Sometimes it is measured in as we face injustice when nobody more does it. He recounted what happened without drama, as a lesson learned. He didn't just talk about racism, he talked about integrity, real leadership, and the need to not settle in the comfort of privilege. They swore to defend this country. That also includes those who inhabit it, regardless of its color, its accent, or his clothes. When finished, the cadet stood up. It was not a superficial applause, but an act of recognition to someone who had incarnated with pain and firmness the values that everyone they repeated in theory. Days later, one of the graduates wrote an open letter that went viral. General Elsworth taught that it is not enough to be brave in the countryside. You have to be brave in life. Naomi did not comment on the letter publicly, but she kept it folded in his desk, among her accolades. For her, that kind of impact was the true legacy. Not them securities, neither the awards, but the minds it helped transform. Meanwhile, in the town where all began, something had also changed. The old One gas station was acquired by a local organization that decided to convert it in a center community. Where previously it was denied a cold, now they were offered digital literacy workshops, youth leadership classes, and free legal advice. At the entrance, a bronze plaque, he remembered what had happened. Here began a truth that could not be silenced, in honor of Naomi Elsworth. The center was not her idea, but upon learning of it, she traveled discreetly there one day. He walked by He Place, greeted the volunteers, and remained several minutes observing the children in a reading room. He didn't say who he was. He didn't need do it. When, leaving, a girl of about 9 years old approached her timidly. "Are you the lady in the photo?" he asked, pointing at the plaque. Naomi smiled and bent down to be at his side. "Height? Yes, it's me." The girl, it seemed, think about it for a second and then said, I want to be like you when I grow up." Naomi held back her excitement and stroked him. His shoulder and replied, "And I hope you don't have to be for the same reasons." Sometimes a phrase, so he said more than any speech. He walked back to his car with the heart full of contradictions, but also with a certainty that girl would not grow in the same country that stopped her to she. In the following months, Vos Firma expanded his scope. They opened headquarters in other states, signed alliances with universities, and began to work with bodies police officers who really, they wanted reform from inside. Naomi was nowhere to be seen in all the events, but reviewed each plan, each focus. He remained in charge, although in silence. One day, a journalist asked him if I didn't miss the army, the missions, the uniforms. Naomi thought for a moment and replied, "No, because I understood that this is also a war. Only it is not one with weapons, it is one with persistence." That phrase, which seemed a footnote in an interview long, ended being cited in books, murals, and even in speeches presidential elections. Despite the achievements, Naomi continued to receive criticism. They said that he was exaggerating, that he was polarizing, that he had become a victim, become profitable. She no longer responded. She learned that the noise was not worth it. His energy, your approach was in who they wanted listen, not in who they would never do it. When I walked on the street and someone recognized her, a nod of the head, a smile contained, a discreet thank you to remind her that she was in a path correct. I wasn't. Looking for approval, sought impact, and that he had it, not like a viral figure, but as a woman who refused to lower her gaze. Subscribing is more than a click. It's saying yes to voices that deserve to be heard. One autumn afternoon, Naomi received an invitation unexpected. The National Museum of African American History and Culture wanted to include his history in a new exposure about women, black women who changed the direction of the country. At first, he hesitated. He did not consider himself part of history, but someone who barely was beginning to push he present. But after think about it, he accepted with a condition. Also include the names of those who were never heard. When the exhibition opened, among photographs and documents, there were an empty display case with a plaque that read, "For the voices that have not yet been heard." That detail, Naomi's idea, moved thousands of visitors and became one of the pieces further photographed from the museum. That day, while I walked around the exhibition accompanied by veterans, activists, and family members, Naomi stopped in front of an image of himself, taken fair in a moment in who spoke to the country with his uniform. He looked at her in silence. To his side, one young museum volunteer told her, "Thank you for reminding us that even the further strong need to be defended." Naomi didn't respond. She just breathed deep and nodded, as who carries something more big, yes, same. It didn't feel icon, nor martyr. He felt like responsible for not allowing the memory to fade, the indignation to cool. The momentum was lost in applause, momentary. Sometime later, Naomi wrote a book, not an autobiography, but a collection of stories, real people who, like she, had faced abuses and decided speak. He titled it In Sight, because I believed that only what is seen can be transformed. The book was not long in coming and becoming an editorial success, but what more valued she were the letters that arrived with each new edition. Stories of overcoming, confessions of pain, thanks sincere. Some. They were young people who said have decided study law thanks to his history. Others, from officers who recognized have acted badly in the past and now they wanted do different. For Naomi, each page written was an act of reparation. Despite everything the recognitions, Naomi always, I returned to the same place each anniversary of the incident, the little girl community in Louisiana, where all it started. No press, no speeches, no cameras. I walked alone through his center community, greeted the volunteers, and then sat down some minutes in front of the plaque with its name. I didn't do it out of nostalgia, but by purpose, to remember by that continued fighting, because his uniform, medals, and applause was not the most important. The important thing was that none another person, never more, had to live what she lived to be heard. One day, while I was leaving the center community, a young man approached him running. I would have some 20 years, skin brunette, cap toward back, and one file in his hand. "General Elsworth, do you have a minute?" She stopped, curious. The young man explained that he was applying for a scholarship in a university out of state and that there was written an essay about she. "Thanks to you, I understood that I don't have to stay reserved when something is wrong, that I can be firm. Without losing his respect." He handed her the folder with trembling hands. Naomi took it carefully and replied, "And you just reminded me by that it was worth it all this." That night, upon returning home, Naomi sat down in front of his desk. On top of it, it had clippings, letters, reports, and acknowledgements, but also a photograph of her same that day in the pavement, handcuffed, with a look high. Not to revive the pain, but not to forget his origin. The moment in which everything changed. I knew that still there was a lot to do, but I also knew that I was no longer walking alone. There was a generation new observing, learning, replicating his example, and that was more stronger than any blow or prejudice. Naomi Elsworth not only survived a humiliation public, it transformed it in engine change. Its name, previously reserved for circles military, he became symbol of resistance, civic, but more beyond the uniform and the cameras. There was a true essential. Dignity does not depend on recognition external, but of the decision intimate not to accept the unacceptable. And Naomi decided, from that day at the gas station, that she would never, the more he would stay in silence. The story ended, but not the fight, because while is a voice firm, there is hope. If you've made it this far, it's because this story touched you. Help us continue. Subscribe to the channel. It's the only way we can continue bringing stories like this to life.